Hey guys, welcome back. It's AG and you're watching Math to the Max. Today we'll discuss triangles with Sohcahtoa. What's the vocabulary for Sohcahtoa or Sohcahtoa? So the right angle, you see a right angle, which we call 90 degrees, every time you see a box in the corner. Don't assume unless you see the box, then we know it's 90 degrees. Sohcahtoa, Sohcahtoa. So this is an acronym used to solve right triangles based on the three trigonometric functions. What are those three functions? Let's check them out. So sine, and as you see highlighted in yellow or goldish, S is the sine, and OH stands for the opposite in hypotenuse. The next one is cosine. Cosine is the C, and that stands for adjacent over hypotenuse. And then tangent, tan, represents opposite over the adjacent. And the A beside the trig function, so you said sine A, cosine A, tan A just stands for the angle. Okay, the angle. Opposite side, when we talk about the opposite just means across. Think about north and south. It's across from each other. Think about east and west. So opposite side will be the side across from an angle. And always the given angle that they give you. You'll see when we do our examples. Adjacent side is the side touching an angle. Touching the angle. Adjacent means touching. All right, hypotenuse is the longest side of the right triangle, and that's always across from the 90. So the 90 points to the hypotenuse, which is the longest side. It's like the ladder. Imagine the ladder leaning against the wall. The ladder is the hypotenuse. And then your inverse trigonometric functions are sine inverse, cosine inverse, and tan inverse. Why are we using that? We want to use that to cancel out sine, cosine, and tan. So you remember we're going to be solving some equations. And how you get rid of our inverse equations to get rid of stuff like opposite addition or the inverse addition, subtraction. So the inverse of sine is sine inverse. All right, so that's why we doing the inverse trig functions. All right, let's keep it rolling. All right, prerequisite. What is our prior knowledge that's going to be very, very helpful to do this new knowledge? So using the calculator, and particularly you need to know, okay, hey, where's the sine, cosine, and tan on the calculator? Hopefully you've seen it. It's on our iPhone as well, Android, not to discriminate. All right, so those are our three trig functions, and the inverse is right on top of it. How to solve a one-step equation. Let's look at a quick example. All right, boom, we got x divided by 3 equals 5. All right, how I solve it real quickly? Well, we know the opposite of divide by 3 be multiplied by 3. And then the 3's counts on the left side. So you're left with x equals 5 times 3. So x is equal to 15. You should know how to solve that one-step equation. All right, the next thing you need to know how to do is solve a two-step equation. Let's look at an example. All right, so I'll give you 5 divided by x. The difference between the first example and this example is our variable is now in the denominator versus the numerator. All right, so you always multiply by the denominator. So multiplying by x on both sides. The x's would cancel on the left side. So now you're just left with 5 equals 20x. How you solve that one-step equation? How you get rid of multiplication? The opposite of multiplication, you should be saying division. So I divide by 20 on both sides. And the 20s cancel out. So I'm left with x equals, simplify your fraction, guys. Always simplify fractions, and you should get 1/4. What's the process? You're going to first label the sides based on the angle. So your hypotenuse side, that's always the longest side. Label that. Your opposite side is across from the given angle. They're going to give you an angle. Label your opposite side that's across from that angle. And then adjacent is by default the last one, but adjacent means the side touching that angle. Set up the problem based on the trig equation. Remember, sine of an angle equals something. Cosine of an angle equals something. Tangent of an angle equals something. All right, based on the three cases though. So case 1 is going to be a variable in the numerator. When you set it up, you'll see this. Case 2 will be a variable in the denominator. In case 3 will be a variable is the angle. So those are only the three cases you will see. Case 1, when you have the variable in the numerator. So look at the example, sine 30 equals x over 3. If you solve that one-step equation, how do we get rid of divide by 3? Well, we multiply by 3, and the 3's will end up canceling. That's why you're left with x, and the 3 will be multiplied in the front. Sometimes a mistake is you multiply the angle. No, you just multiply in the front as a coefficient. All right, so case 2. You multiply by the denominator every time to solve for a fraction because we want to get rid of the fraction. So we'll multiply by x. The x will cancel on the right side, and we multiply as a coefficient on the other side. And now, if I'm trying to get x by itself, it's with something being multiplied. Sine 30 is being multiplied. Sine 30 is a numerical value. Just divide by that sine 30 on both sides, and we get 3 over sine 30. And then case 3, the last case, is the variable is the angle. All right, if I want to solve for the angle, I need to get rid of sine. So you do sine inverse on both sides. And you just left with a equals the sine inverse of 7 over 10. So, and what's most important is knowing where's the variable located. And if you know that, that's how the final answer will look at the bottom. It's either a multiplication problem for case 1 for the last answer. For case 2, it's going to be a division. And then case 3 is going to be the inverse of some fraction. Every single time. All right, let's check out some examples. Let's do some practice. You already know what time it is. It's time to go to work. Find x. This is our triangle right here. Based on the triangle, you should be labeling your sides. What are the sides? The hypotenuse, the opposite, and adjacent. All right, so what's the hypotenuse? You should be thinking it is 12. What's the opposite side? Well, based on the angle 35, opposite means across. So the side that's across from 35 is the x. That's your opposite. And then adjacent is touching that angle. The side touching is at the bottom. There's the last one by default. So now, based on what sides are given, that's opposite and a hypotenuse. So what you should be thinking is, hey, what's the trig function that uses the O and the H? And that is sine. So the equation in the notes was sine of the angle equals opposite over the hypotenuse. And go ahead and plug in. So when we plug in, we know our angle is 35. We know our opposite was x, and our hypotenuse was 12. How do you solve it when the variable is in the numerator? That was case 1. Multiply by the denominator, so you get 12 sine 35, and of course 35 is degrees, but when you put it in the calculator, it's not going to have a degree symbol. But make sure your calculator has the mode degrees, because you can be in degrees or radians. It should be in degrees because 35 is a degree. Once you put that in the calculator, this is what you get. Approximately 6.88. You did it. Let's go to example 2. Find x. All right, go ahead and label your triangle. The hypotenuse is the longest side. The opposite side is based on the angle 58. Where is the opposite side? Opposite means across, so the side across on 58 is 8. And by default, the last one is adjacent, the side touching. So now, what are the two sides that we have labeled? That's the adjacent side, and we have the opposite. What trig function uses those two sides? You should be thinking, or you should be looking at your notes, and you see it is tan. So tan A equals opposite over adjacent. Go ahead and plug in tan of A, angle, the angle is 58, so it's going to be tan 58. equals 8 over x. How do you solve for x when it's in the denominator? You know you're going to multiply by the denominator every time. And we get x tan 58 equals 8. And then divide by tan 58. Put that in your calculator. And we get approximately 5. It's like 4.99. So approximately 5. So based on x, we'll label our sides. We know our longest side is always called the hypotenuse. Label that. Our next side will be opposite. Based on the angle, x at the bottom, what's the opposite side? It will be at the top. And by default, 5 will be our adjacent side touching thing. Alright, so based on the two sides that were given, 8 and 5, we know we have adjacent and a hypotenuse. So what trig function uses the adjacent and the hypotenuse? You will say cosine. So that's your formula. And then you just set it up. So cosine of the angle, what's the angle? The angle was x, and the adjacent was 5, and the hypotenuse was 8. Now, we're trying to solve for x, or the angle in this case, but how do you get rid of cosine? You have to do cosine inverse. So you take the cosine inverse on both sides. X is equal to cosine inverse of 5 over 8. You need to put that in your calculator just how you see it, and you will get the angle 38.68 degrees. Final answer. So it's pretty simple if you just know those three formulas and know how to label the triangle, and you know your three cases you're going to do. It's either going to be a multiplication problem, division problem, or the inverse. That's it, guys. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you subscribe, like, share with your friends or anybody you know that's taking geometry. I have other videos you can watch if you need more assistance with math. Always striving for excellence and reaching for success.